Who's ready to hunt some Jedi? Special thank you to all my lovely patrons, especially Nerf Nothing for being an amazing pro patron. Greetings audience, I'm Boomstick, and today we're looking at the C38A Venator and the C38 cable gun. The Venator is a pump action springer with a horizontal magwell that takes talons, so it obviously fires short darts. While the C38 cable launcher is a kind of added accessory that can fire mega darts. Now this blaster is obviously based off the Clone Trooper carbine, which is why it has this very recognizable aesthetic. Because if you've seen anything that Cobalt Designs has done, you know that they are a big fan of Star Wars, specifically Clone Troopers. If you see them on the field, they're usually rocking some kind of Clone Trooper getup, which is awesome. The cable gun is a very simple rear primed mega dart blasting that uses this little side button here. Very similar to the Mistress Key, which I did a review on forever ago. I believe it took a lot of similar designs, although I do really like how well this melds with the blaster. Now, I will say that I bought this blaster secondhand, and I had to do a little bit of tuning on it before I could take it to the field. And I was getting this cable gun from Cobalt Designs separately, which is why the two oranges don't really match, unfortunately. But I do still think it works rather well. Now, much like the rest of Cobalt Designs' work, you can only get these pre-built from Cobalt Designs' website, which I will have linked down below in the description. These are all printed in PLA, and I have no complaints over the assembly or the print quality. It's all pretty good. I'm very happy with the build quality of it. So even though I technically prefer building my own, obviously I do love getting my hands on some pre-built stuff as well, just to save me that bit of extra time. A couple other side notes, because I got this secondhand, there is an option to where you can get Picatinny on the top here, which I actually would really prefer. It also has these little slots here for if you want to attach those magnets to kind of use the magnet holster systems that people use, which is pretty nice that so many designs have basically the capability of using magnets. The railgun attachment just attaches to the Picatinny right here along the front. Now, if you are going to get the railgun, I highly recommend you get the longer foregrip option that Cobalt Designs has for the Venator, because the one I have wasn't originally designed to go with the railgun, so it's a little bit short. And as you can see, this rear prime gets in the way of me holding the foregrip. So with the longer forebrick, it comes back a little farther so it's not in the way. Now, I will say I'm not sure how well it'll work when the cable gun is primed, because as you see, that pretty much almost completely covers up the grip, so I can't really leave that primed. I have to kind of just prime it as I need it. The one other thing that you might notice is that this doesn't have a stock, which will come up later. Well, let me say it technically has a stock. On their website, they do advertise that it has a stock, but there is an asterisk next to that because this little spot of Picatinny here, this is technically a screen-accurate stock. To where this would, technically, if you didn't have the cable gun on there, would work a lot better, obviously. But you could technically switch it up like that and be able to use this as a stock like this, obviously without the cable gun. It folds up, so there's nothing holding this in place, unfortunately. I wish there was a way to lock these two pieces in place, just like a printed piece to go from here to here, and lock it in place, because then I could have a stock. I'm still not sure how much I trust it, just because this is fairly flexible, but that would be a nice option, because I do think this blaster needs a stock, but obviously this is meant to be a screen accurate kind of more replica piece while still maintaining its functionality. And speaking of no stock, that does make it difficult to prime because this thing has a rather beefy prime on it. For what it's getting FPS-wise, it has a very beefy prime. And more along the lines of comfort, the grip is okay. It's pretty good. The issue I run into is this little nub here rubs against my wrist, which is not comfortable, so it kind of rests on my wrist, which is not comfortable. So my arm kind of has to go to the side a little bit so it's not resting on it. I make it work, but like naturally it would want to more rest on my hand, which is just not comfortable. But all that being said, there's a very particular reason you would get this blaster. And that is because you want to go out in the field and be a clone trooper. The Venator also does have these neat little iron sights. They're a little low, so I kind of have to get way back here in order to actually use them. So again, more screen accurate than rather practicality goes, which is kind of the way it goes with the Venator. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say on the overview. Let's take it to the field and see how it actually runs. I was able to run the Venator on the DMV competitive field, which has an FPS cap of 200, and it performed rather well despite the fact that I was having difficulty aiming it without a red dot or any sights that would allow me to properly aim with. The horizontal mag did stick out more than I wanted to whenever I peeked around the right side, so it did make me a bigger target. But overall, it did compete with other competitive blasters on the field. I also took the Venator to the indoor Southern Maryland House of Nerf event, which had an FPS cap of 200. And on that larger field, I really did notice my difficulties in being able to aim. I did get some good shots in, but I definitely noticed that it was harder than other blasters I've used. Now, I did have a chance to run it against some shield players, so I was able to use the cable gun. The range was not fantastic. I would say it's probably weaker than the Crooked Cousin or Little Rocket or any of the other out-of-darts options. But it is nice to have that option that matches the blaster so well. So it's better than nothing, but definitely not anything that would blow you away. But despite those shortcomings, the Venator did have the power, so it was competitive. It just had some quirks. But those are kind of outweighed by the coolness of running around with a clone trooper carbine. So now that we've had a chance to take this out of the field, let's go over our overall thoughts. Firstly, as I already said, it is kind of difficult to aim just because I naturally want to be more down here, which is a little bit more tricky because it's not as comfortable to aim up here. So my natural instinct of priming and firing from this position lends to me being less accurate. Obviously, if you got the version with the Picatinny on top and got a scope or a red dot sight that was higher, that would be easier to aim with. But in its current format, I did find it rather difficult to aim. The cable gun is kind of rather disappointing as far as performance goes compared to things like the Crooked Cousin and Little Rocket. It's serviceable for those close engagement when you really need it, but you're definitely not going to get any kind of major distance out of the cable gun. It's really an emergency specialty zombie shield thing. So useful, yes, but there are better options on the market. I would recommend this only if you want to get basically the Venator and you want it to match the look of the Venator. As far as Venator itself, I did find it fun to use. It is really cool running out in the field with a clone trooper rifle. Running out in the field, especially when I go up and play in New Jersey where they actually have a class known as Jedi. So this is like the perfect thing to do with them because you can fire mega. Despite being a horizontal magwell, I did find it was a very easy reload system. The only issue with the horizontal magwell is I did find that when trying to stick close to cover and being able to take shots, it did get in the way a bit with either hitting the cover in front of me when I'm trying to stay close to it or poking out too far when I'm trying to peek around the right side of the cover. So pretty much all my complaints can kind of be waved away just based off it was built to look like a clone trooper carbine. So it makes sense why they made the decisions they did. One thing I think this would really shine in is if it had a weaker spring. If you got this down to like say HVZ levels or maybe 150, sure, it would still have a bit beefier of a prime than probably a standard blaster hitting those ranges. It would be much more manageable than this really beefy prime for 200 FPS. Especially when we have so many things out in the field right now, which will get you 200 and higher with a buttery smooth prime. Whereas this one, I'm kind of fighting the prime to get it back. Even though I got used to it, it is something that you really want to consider if you're looking at the Venator. But despite all my complaints, it is what it was designed to be, and that is a kind of competitive level blaster that looks like a Clone Trooper carbine. So it does what it set out to do. I have my complaints, but overall, if you want to be a Clone Trooper on the battlefield, there's not really a better blaster than the Venator from Cobalt Designs. So let's go ahead and bring down our little grid here. I'm going to put the Venator right there. Yeah, I think that's fair. It's fun, it's really cool, and it will meet those competitive levels of play. It just might be a little bit stiffer of a prime. So that was my thoughts on the C38A Venator and the C38 cable gun. Definitely check out the description down below for all the links to Cobalt Designs and other things such as Patreon and whatnot. Leave a like and a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Venator. Would you consider picking out one of these despite its issues, just because you could be on the field looking like a cool clone trooper? So yeah, let me know, and hit the subscribe so you can see what we're going to be doing next. And I'm been Boomstick. I'll see you on the field.
Right in front of Glennon.